Hey guys, we've been given this equation. We're being asked to solve for x, right? Now your first instinct might be to try to factor it, which is a really good instinct. But if you try and factor this, it's not going to factor very easily. It's just not really going to work, okay? So when that happens, you have two options. You have the quadratic formula or completing the square. In this example, we're going to complete the square. If you'd like to see me do the same problem, doing the quadratic formula, I'll link that video in the corner for you, okay? All right, but when we're completing the square, our whole goal is we want to end up with something that looks like this. It's not going to be a 2 and a 10, but we want parentheses squared equal to something. That's our whole goal, okay? So what I need to do first is get my variables alone, okay? So all I need to do for that is to add 10 to both sides, right? Okay, when I do that, I'm going to end up with x squared plus 6x equals 10. Okay. All right. From here, I need to figure out what number I need to add to this side so it factors to something squared. Okay. Now we could try and guess a million different numbers and that would be awful. Okay. So somebody smarter than me figured out if we take b, divide it by 2, and square it, that is our magic number that'll make this factor to something squared, okay? Now, if you're like, what is she talking about? There are no b's on this paper. This is where I'm getting the b from, okay? The number in front of my x, when our quadratic equation is in standard form, is considered my b, okay? So in this one, it is 6, okay? So I'm going to take 6, divide it by 2, and square it, okay? 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. 3 squared gives me 9. Okay, so my magic number is 9. So I'm going to add 9 to this side. But if I add it to one side, I got to add it to the other to keep it balanced, right? Okay, so let's see what happens when I add 9 to both sides. I'm going to get x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 10 plus 9 gives me 19, okay? From here, my next step is to factor this side. That was our whole goal, right? So when I factor this, you could just go ahead and factor it the normal way, 9 times 1. What two numbers multiply to 9 and add to 6? And I'm going to get x plus 3 times x plus 3. Now, as you do this more and more, you'll start to notice patterns and probably be able to factor that without having to do it the normal way. But until then, go ahead and factor it the normal way, okay? All right, so x plus 3 times x plus 3 can be rewritten as x plus 3 squared, right? Oh my gosh, this is what we wanted. We wanted parentheses squared equal to something, okay? So from here, it is very simple to solve for x, okay? So this whole side is being squared. So I'm going to take the square root of it, and then I got to do that to the other side, right? So then on this side, those cancel. So I'm left with x plus 3 on this side equals the square root of 19. Now the square root of 19 is not a pretty number, right? If you plug that into your calculator, you're going to get an ugly, nasty decimal, right? Also, I can't simplify it down any further. Sometimes even square roots that don't have a pretty number, you can still break them down. But this one is kind of stuck as the square root of 19, okay? But the one thing that we do need to remember is whenever we're doing square roots, whenever we introduce a square root, we need to remember our plus or minus the square root of 19, okay? Why is that? That's because, say we have the square root of 9. 3 times 3 is 9, right? So it's equal to 3. But also, -3 times -3 is 9. So we need to represent both of those answers, which is why we have the plus or minus, okay? All right, from here, we're almost done. If I want to get x alone, I need to get rid of that plus 3, right? So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, okay? So I end up with x equals, I'm going to write the -3 first, -3 plus or minus the square root of 19, okay? Now, I know this is kind of a bummer, but that is your answer, okay? I know it's not pretty. But some teachers may want you to break it down or break it apart as well. So you could write it as x equals -3 plus the square root of 19 and x equals -3 minus the square root of 19. Okay, now I know this isn't a pretty answer, but remember the reason that we did completing the square in the first place was because it didn't factor pretty, right? So it kind of makes sense that our answer is a little crazy, right? Okay, again, another way to do this is the quadratic formula. If you want to see me do it that way, I will link it in the corner. Hopefully this made sense. Thanks. Bye.